I want to start by saying thank you so very much to Reverend Christine for her beautiful talk last Sunday. Wasn't she great? Oh my gosh. We have the best ministerial team. Thank you for holding down the fort. It was a beautiful talk. It was awesome. Hello to our friends online from all over. Mwah! Happy December. So the title of my talk this morning is Heaven on Earth. Now, when I was a kid, I thought that heaven was filled with really, really kind people, kind of like Canada, you know. And I don't know about you, everyone's different, but the God of my path that had no shame, no guilt, no hell, fire, and damnation anywhere to be found, this faith path that honored all people, all walks of life, all faith paths, that had these spiritual practices like meditation that have been scientifically proven to bring greater peace. Well, I felt like I found the Holy Grail, because I did. Yes? Yes. So in New Thought, we teach that God loves source, energy, higher power, whatever word works for you. We teach that this eternal love lives at the very center of every sentient being, both on this side and the other side of life. And that this love is at the center of each one of us. It is the most true thing about us. God love, spirit source, is at the epicenter of all that is. And this, my friends, is a beautiful baseline. Now, in 1927, Ernest Holmes wrote, "Heaven is within us, and we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it." Isn't that juicy? Heaven is within us, and we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. So let's start with that. So the etymology of the word heaven comes from hephon, which is an Old English word that means a place where God dwells. Heaven is a place where God dwells. And this concept of an inner heaven, or the place where God dwells, or light dwells, or love dwells within us, is actually found in ancient wisdom traditions across religious history. Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, earth-based spirituality, Sikhism, Baha'i, Zoroastrianism, to name a few, all of these teach some form of light, love, or God lives within us, is at the center of us. Heaven is the place where God dwells. Jesus of Nazareth said, "The kingdom," or as I like to add, the queendom and the kingdom, is within. The kingdom, the queendom, and the kingdom are within. In the 14th century translation of the word heaven, it is described as a state of bliss. So heaven is a state of being. And we've all experienced moments of this heavenly bliss here on earth. All of us, when we fall in love, when we discover our purpose or whatever it is that makes our hearts sing. I know for me there have been times, moments in my life where I've been with one of my daughters or one of my fur babies, my sweet puppy, my great kitties. And I have to catch my breath because I recognize in that moment, I am so overwhelmed with love that it is, in that moment, heaven on earth. In that nanosecond, that's heaven on earth. And that feeling happens within me. My daughters, my sweet doggy and my kitties may be oblivious to it, but I know, because that experience of heaven, that God moment, that heavenly moment occurs within my body temple, within my being. Not long ago, I was in California with my parents. Hi, Mom and Dad. And we were sitting around the dining room table. It was just the three of us, which, you know, I've got a huge Irish family. Just the three of us around a table is a rare thing. But we were sitting around the table and we were talking about the world and what's going on and just laughing, and we were so connected and feeling so happy. And I realized in that moment with my parents that I was so blessed, so profoundly blessed to be able to experience heaven on earth with them in that moment around that table with my family. I don't know if they experienced it. Mom and Dad, you can call me, let me know how it was for you, but, you know. Each of us has had an experience of this state of bliss. When we are in the flow, when we're creating something, whether it's a piece of art, working in the garden, or cooking, or playing a sport, being in nature. Whatever it is, we've all experienced this because we all know that feeling when time stops. You know that feeling when time stops? That is a divine moment of heaven on earth. That, when time stops, that's heaven on earth, and it comes from within us. St. Catherine of Siena wrote, "All the way to heaven is heaven." All the way to heaven is heaven. And I believe that heaven, the place where God dwells, is also outside of us. It is everywhere because God's Spirit source is everywhere. There is no spot where God is not. The 14th century scholars got it right. Heaven is a state of being. It is not some cloud-filled candy land in the sky. It just isn't. Heaven is happening right now, through and as each one of us. It is at the center of each one of us. So, the next time you experience a beautiful connection with another human being, or you're in the flow of creating something that makes your heart sing, I'm going to invite you to just gently stop, take a breath, and realize that in that moment you are experiencing heaven on earth right here. We experience heaven on earth through human connection and creative expression. It's one of the ways, just one of the ways we experience heaven on earth through human connection and creative expression. Henry David Thoreau said, "Heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads." So we've established that the place from within us that we experience that bliss or those God moments is heaven. But what about during difficult times? If heaven is a place where God dwells and is always inside of us, where does it go when we are having challenges? My friends, I am here to share with you that it does not go anywhere. Sometimes we disconnect from it, from that centered place of love, of unconditional love within us. But if you turn toward it in those times, if you can, and you move into that space, what I want you to know is you might experience it somewhat differently when you're moving through challenge. You might have a different kind of heaven within when you're moving through challenge. The second aspect of this idea is that we can choose to think of heaven as that place within us that houses our inner strength, courage, and determination. That is also heaven within us. Our strength comes from our connection to the divine. Now, our divine connection might be in nature. It might be with our fur babies or our babies. It might be in the creative flow. However you experience the divine in this world, your strength comes from that. How many of us go outside for a hike in this beautiful place where we live and are revitalized, rejuvenated? We feel empowered because we're connected with the divine. That's when we're feeling that. So think about something for a moment, if you will. Remember when you wished for what you have right now? Think about it. Do you remember? A ways back, when you wished for what you have right now, or more importantly, who you are right now. That comes from that place of heaven within us. What you have co-created right now with the divine occurred because of the strength, the courage, and the determination at the center of your being, which is also called God, love, source, spirit. That is that. Now, I want to tell you a story about a fellow that I love. When he was 28 years old, Götz Philippi fled war-torn Yugoslavia. He arrived in this country a refugee. He was living in New York. He spoke no English. And he had very little more than the clothes on his back. Eventually, after a long period of time of searching, he got a job as a janitor at Columbia University. And an employee benefit there was that he was able to take classes for free. And so he started to study English. And along with working full-time, he spent 7 years of night classes until he spoke fluent English. He could write it, he could read it, and he spoke it beautifully. And then, while remaining the janitor at Columbia University, he spent the next 12 years going to school there, taking classes, and then 19 years later, at the age of 52, he graduated with honors at the top of his class from this Ivy League school with a master's degree in classics. There he is. That's Götz Philippi. There he is again. 19 years later. 19 years later. Now, his journey was far from easy. The classics involve Greek and Latin. It was far from easy, and he struggled a great deal, especially in the early years. But it was his inner strength, his inner heaven, that got him through. The indwelling spirit, that place of strength within him, just kept nudging him forward. This is the same divine power, this same heaven within all of us that is always gently, lovingly nudging us forward. I remember way, way back for me, in my 20s, when I began to do the work of clearing my own inner clutter. Especially for me, it was the often brutal inner critic of mine. And as soon as I began to clear that voice and realize what was underneath it, I became so deeply aware of my own inner heaven, that unconditionally loving part of myself that I had never met, at least not as an adult. And I became stronger, and I became kinder. I became kinder to myself, mainly. I speak from personal experience that when we discover that benevolent, loving power, that strength of heaven, of the cosmos of which we are a part of, when we discover that within us, we walk and we talk, we treat others, we pray, and we be differently in the world. It's like waking up after a really, really, really long sleep. You know, once you come to, everything seems sharper and it seems brighter. And at the same time, there is this soft layer of compassion on top of it all. And listen, honey, we are all works in progress. Hello? We're all works in progress. But when we accept, finally, once and for all, the ongoing relationship with the God of our understanding, when we realize that we are actually in constant communication, co-creating with this divine power within us, life gets so much easier, yes? So here's what I want to say. If you are struggling right now, I invite you to be gentle with yourself, to lean into the knowing that there is an undeniable force within you. Yes, it is just like Luke Skywalker or Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It is this force within you, this heavenly force, which is not attached to any religion. It is timeless, it is ageless, it is the truth of you, it is your higher power. And it will guide you if you listen and pay attention to, say, the right therapist or the right practitioner. It can guide you to the right helpers for where you are right now in your life to support you. And it's this inner light or love. It can guide you to the right next job or the right decision, big decision that you may have. You know, so often we can feel stuck and we think we won't be able to get out of a situation or environment or relationship or old patterns that are no longer serving us, but we can. We can. And who knows, you might even, I don't know, get a degree in classics from Columbia University. We experience heaven on earth as a wellspring of our inner strength and courage. It's another way we experience heaven, as a wellspring of our inner strength and our courage. So in those times in your life when you realize that you are actually being courageous and strong, I invite you to take a breath and realize, holy, this is heaven. It makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to take the next courageous step when you know that you have heaven backing you up. I believe, in addition to these other ideas, that heaven is not only within each of us, but it is in the collective consciousness of humanity. A few weeks ago, our very own April Krubell sang an awesome version of the song Pulse. Do you remember? She did such a great job. That's the song by Melissa Etheridge. For those of you who may not know, Melissa wrote that song after the shooting at Pulse, the gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where 49 people were killed and 53 were wounded. And that song, as I sat here listening to it, it reminded me of something that I read shortly after that shooting. And if you recall, it was deemed a terrorist attack by a man who swore allegiance to the Islamic State. And then, as a result of that, after the shooting, there were immediate anti-Muslim rhetoric and just horrible things coming from racist groups, which was just hate on top of hate. But the day after that horrible shooting, the Red Cross put out a call that they needed donations for blood. And what moved me so much is I remember seeing the images of people wrapped around for blocks, ready to donate their blood. But the thing, they didn't care gay, straight, that didn't matter. They were just there to donate blood. The thing that moved me to tears was the fact that a very, very large majority of those people that were in line waiting to donate their blood were Muslims. And it was Ramadan. So they were fasting. And they could not drink water. And they stood in 90-degree heat in Florida for hours to donate their blood to people that they did not even know. Heaven itself is in our compassion for others. When I saw those pictures, when I saw that compassion from those just incredibly beautiful lines of people, I saw heaven. I felt heaven. Heaven itself is in our compassion for others. When something horrendous happens to someone or a group of people on the other side of the world or on the other side of our country or on the other side of our state, the pain that we feel is real. Even though technically it didn't happen directly to us, we feel an undeniable connection. We feel compassion when one of our own members of our own global human family has been hurt. Why? Because we're all connected, we're all one. That's why. There is no separation in heaven. I love you, Canada, but you're not the only place. Remember, heaven is the place where God dwells, and the compassion that we feel in those moments, that is heaven on earth. It's in the love for others, it's in the creative flow, and it's in compassion for each other. That, my friends, is our divinity. And that, more than anything, I believe, is the gift and the grace and the love that we have come here to give each other and this planet. As Elizabeth Barrett Browning said, earth is crammed with heaven. So let's be heaven for each other. Thank you. I love you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very kind. Thank you. Thanks.